You final season review an insultingly rubbish ending. Penn Badgley's sexy serial killer story was once ludicrously fun. But despite plenty of fan-pleasing cameos and a propulsive twist, the show's sign-off is so bad that it's offensive. You, in which a serial killer and stalker of women, but a sexy one, is somehow fashioned into the hero of the piece, is a fundamentally preposterous show. It washes its hands of plausibility in favor of vocal fry, phones without passwords and quasi-literary second-person monologues. Perhaps most preposterous of all is that it has stretched the story over 5 seasons. You used to be fun, at least, a guilty-ish pleasure, aware of its own over-the-top silliness, that once gave the impression of knowing that it wasn't so much pushing at the edges of credulity as body-barging it into an abyss. But as the seasons have ticked away, the satire has seeped out, leaving a mess of its own making that it tries, and inevitably struggles, to clear up. The main problem is that Joe Goldberg is both the hero and the villain. In this final, and that really is a mercy, season, you falls back on its old habit of not knowing which it would prefer him to be. After a predictably murderous stint as a lecturer at an English university, Joe is now married to billionaire and philanthropist Kate Lockwood, living in New York with her and with his newly returned son Henry. He is no longer pretending to be dead and another person. Instead, he is a public figure, hiding from his many misdeeds in plain sight. This feels like a necessary shift. The old pattern of Joe falling for a new woman, stalking her, finding that love isn't quite the romantic image in his mind, then realizing that he simply must violently murder her, was growing old. The idea that he can finally be himself, literally, as a celebrity, and with Kate, in that he can be more open about his dexterish tendencies, drives the early part of the season. Joe presents himself as a good guy, expressing how fine it feels to rid the world of assholes. This is a contrivance the show has had to build in, to counter the fundamental ickiness of its premise. Naturally, despite his happy marriage, another young woman moves into Joe's line of sight, and the familiar cycle, in which the good guy falls for a woman and we are forced to wonder if he is in fact the asshole, begins again. Bronte is an Ibsen-loving lost soul and playwright who wanders into Joe's bookshop, talks about literature and wins his heart. Will the reformed Joe Goldberg return to old habits, one last time? You is going back to the beginning for its finale, and not just because it returns Joe to New York City and his creepy murder cage in the basement. There is a hint that it has regained the focus of the first season, and reminded itself that it is supposed to be a satire. Initially, in Joe's fame and Kate's attempts to atone for her own sins, its dark humor is aimed at the ultra-rich. Anna Camp puts in an extra shift as Kate's twin siblings Reagan and Maddie. With them, you occasionally finds fun mode again, somewhere between core and corpse. But largely it plods towards the end, through a series of increasingly convoluted and repetitive plot twists that are silly even by You's standards. Around halfway through, it kicks into gear with a twist that gives some much-needed propulsion, and fittingly, for a swan song. There are plenty of fan-pleasing cameos and callbacks to earlier storylines. There is talk of misogyny, of Joe's delusional tendencies, and it even brings in incels and online mobs, though usually, it merely glances at that world, rather than addressing it in any meaningful way. Shining a light on the central tangle, is Joe a white knight, or an abuser of women? Doesn't disguise the fact that it remains a real issue that you have to ask the question in the first place. You was always going to find it difficult to square its love of Joe with his flaws. It is never clear whether it really wants him to get his comeuppance, or if that is a tedious obligation it must fulfill. The early seasons were daft and twisty enough to rush you through in the hope that you might not notice their shaky foundations. But as it signs off forever, you has no choice but to deal with Joe. It does so with a final scene that manages to be borderline insulting to the viewers who have stuck with it. It's not you, but you, it suggests, that is the problem. Ironically, for a season all about elites, I found that a bit rich. This big mistake turned you from a hit show into another Netflix zombie. Everyone's favorite stalker is back on screens for a 5th and final season. There's more murder, more cover-ups, and more grating voiceover, but there's something or someone missing from the action, writes. Ostensibly, there is plenty of intrigue in this latest series of You. Indeed, there are murders galore, the sting of marital betrayal, and even succession-style family feuding. But something is off about this season. For all his chilling charm, Penn Badgley's serially homicidal loverboy stalker has gone stale. A show as trashy as You Should Never Be Boring. But for proof of how tedious the Netflix hit has become, turn to the recap supplied at the beginning of Season 5, which rehashes 4 cycles of largely identical events. Joe loves girl. Joe vows to be a better person for said girl. Joe falls back into his murderous ways. Girl finds out. Never has a series 4 seasons deep needed a recap less. We know the gist, so let's get on with it. In what is pretty much a reboot of Season 3's storyline, Joe is granted yet another fresh start, respawned in New York City with his British socialite wife Kate, who knows about his dark past and loves him anyway. They're rich. They're happy. Things are peachy, and Joe is keeping his homicidal tendencies in check. Until, of course, his ugly past rears its head. Along with a pretty new girl, a literature-loving ragamuffin played with the wounded scrappiness of a street cat by Handmaid's Tale star Madeline Brewer. And thus, the cycle continues, as sure as the sun will rise. It's a shame that it has come to this. This, being a series defined by predictable plotting, cloying narration, and a roster of one-dimensional characters forgotten as quickly as they're introduced. It's a shame because there was an alternative to this. There was, at one point, hope that you could be a different type of show, one that takes risks and plays with audience expectations, and that hope was Love. Devotees are nodding their heads vigorously right now because in the U fandom Love Quinn remains unrivaled. Played to psychotic perfection by Victoria Pedretti, the character was introduced at the start of Season 2 as a new love interest for Joe, who, having just murdered his girlfriend at the end of Season 1, decamps to Los Angeles, where his eye is caught by a blonde in the grocery aisle. "Does this peach look like a butt to you?" she asks, doe-eyed and angelic. Spoiler alert, Joe ends up killing Love too, because of course he does. But not before Love leaves her mark. Their innocuous meet-cute belied a character who, across 2 seasons, displayed depths far richer than the typical girlfriend in a Netflix #1 show. Love is a widow and a chef, the heiress to the city's luxury grocery store Anavrin. Yes, that's Nirvana spelt backwards. Love is sweet and smiley, a sexy chef who licks a good number of spoons throughout the season. Maybe she's a little obsessive, but well, it's nice to see Joe on the back foot for once, knocked off balance by this sudden wave of affection. Speaking in Gone Girl terms, Love is the archetypal cool girl, and it's through her character that the writers have a ball exploring the ways that men project a fantasy upon women. She's also got a temper. Throughout the season, we see Love's mood change on a dime, a rapid switch from docile to demented that's embodied by Pedretti as her whole face slackens and her mouth droops in displeasure. What comes next is anybody's guess. Much of what makes Love so brilliant is down to Pedretti, who as an actor is as believable as a heartbroken widow as she is with an axe in her hand. In fact, she embodies that mercurial quality so well that when at the end of Season 2 it's revealed that surprise, Love is a killer, too. It comes as a shock but crucially an earned one. And when the twist is played out for us, the way she manipulated Joe the same way he did her, how she was the one to murder Delilah and bludgeon Candace to death to protect Joe, that she killed her au pair to protect her brother, and that she had been the one to poison her dead husband, it's satisfying. An aha moment to savor, deliciously deranged. To his dismay, Joe has met his match. Love holds up a mirror to his actions, and he is repulsed because, well, it's only okay when he does it. It seems the writers knew they had hit on something special with Love. No other character to date has been afforded their own voiceover as she was, momentarily taking over duties from the increasingly anodyne Joe. And they also let her survive for an additional season, with Series 3 seeing the couple navigate newlywed life with a newborn in the suburbs as they try to get past their tormented history, the murders, the lies. The fact Joe was going to kill Love before she told him she was pregnant. Too much water under the bridge, as they say. Through Love's character, you was able to avoid the dreaded sophomore slump. She had made herself so indispensable, in fact, that when it came to the Season 3 finale, a tense standoff in which only one of them was coming out alive, there was a real possibility that it might be Love. If only. How bold it would have been to kill off Joe and refocus the lens on love. How exciting. How fresh. It's hard to envisage exactly what a series following Love Quinn would have looked like, which is, I'd argue, only further credit to her character's unpredictability. There was so much more to explore in Love. The show could have provided a psychic spelunking into her troubled romantic past, abusive parents, and relationship with her now-dead brother, a toxic codependence that walked right up to the line of incest but never tipped into White Lotus territory. But no, the risk proved too great. A step too far for Netflix, who loved to play it safe. And so, in the end, it was love who perished to the woozy piano notes of Taylor Swift's Exile as she succumbed to Joe's poison. It can be hard to pinpoint the exact moment a good TV show starts to decline, but in the case of You, the answer is cut and dried. It was right then and there. When love died, the audacious potential of You died with her, leaving us with a walking corpse of a show stuck on autopilot. R.I.P. You. But mainly, R.I.P. Love Quinn. Say hello to the You Season 5 cast. From the Goldbergs to the Lockwoods to Bronte and beyond. In You Season 5, Joe Goldberg is welcomed back to New York City with open arms. But the book lover, and fatally romantic obsessive, isn't returning to the same Manhattan he knew in You Season 1. Joe is no longer the working-class shop employee with a small apartment and an even smaller crawl space hiding criminal evidence. Instead, thanks to his marriage to billionaire CEO Kate Lockwood, he is seen as a devoted husband, an upstanding father, and New York City's beloved Prince Charming. With Joe's new upper-crust status comes a cadre of wealthy socialites, cutthroat businesspeople, and beguiling downtown creatives who make up the You Season 5 cast. One half of Joe's life is dominated by Kate's family business, the Lockwood Corporation. And the power-hungry relatives, like identical twins Reagan and Maddie Lockwood, who lead the company. Joe doesn't feel great about anything, really. He's trying to stomach being one of the 0.01%, a billionaire, Badgley tells Tudum. He's fooling himself, but he's doing a pretty good job, as he always does. Joe's distaste for the rarefied air of Manhattan's Upper West Side pulls him toward his roots, to Mooney's bookstore and the freedom of downtown, where he meets free spirit Bronte. Downtown represents the darker, truer part of Joe, co-showrunner Michael Foley explained. While Joe tries to figure out who he wants to be, relationships will form, bonds will be tested, and everyone will try to make it out alive. Keep reading for a complete guide to the entire cast of characters making up You's fifth and final season, as Joe races toward an unforgettable ending. The Goldbergs. Penn Badgley, as Joe Goldberg. About the character. After leaving piles of bodies in his wake, Joe has come back home to New York City. He's now equipped with the influence and money that comes with a multi-billion-dollar bank account. But, is enjoying all the privilege Manhattan has to offer enough to curb Joe's most violent urges? In the beginning of Season 5, he has accepted those dark part of himself, Badgley says. But Joe has also quickly learned that Kate couldn't accept him, as much as it seemed like she would at the end of Season 4. Joe has withheld a lot of key bits of truth. What happens when Prince Charming turns back into a frog? A prolifically murderous frog. Previously in Badgley broke out in Gossip Girl, which has an unexpected connection to You Season 5. Returning to the Moonies set was particularly poignant because this is where we shot Gossip Girl, the actor says. And I hadn't really been here except for one day of camera testing a long time ago. So it was creating new memories, but with something that is also quite in the cultural zeitgeist.